It's great to be back with everyone for our 15th episode overall and our first episode of the 2021 field season Lunch and Learn series. We have a lot of new people today, which is great to see. We began these webinars to create a space for us to come together and look at how different industry professionals are using new technologies to streamline problematic compliance tasks. Our guest today is one of those. She's an expert in wetlands and restoration ecology and in rapid assessment methods, the California rapid assessment method in particular. I'll introduce her in a minute, but I will share my screen here. And this is a great shot of Lindsay out in the field, and you can see more information about her in that screen share. You might not know this, but your attendance continues to support frontline workers during the pandemic. So since this is a lunch and learn, we thought we would go with that spirit and buy lunch for frontline workers for every attendee here. So we're going to be buying over 100, potentially 300 meals. So that is so cool. We hope you ask questions. We know there'll be other rapid assessment experts on the lunch and learn. So please give us your input, ask questions, answer questions if they come up. We would really appreciate this to be a dynamic, interactive lunch and learn. I'm the host, Kristen Hazard, founder and CEO of WildNote. WildNote is an environmental compliance automation platform built specifically for environmental consultants, permittees, and regulators. Our Director of Customer Success, Nancy Douglas.
Hey, everybody.
And our Strategy and Operations Guru, Rini Punzi, in the house. Awesome. Okay, so please use the chat window to interact and post questions for the panel, and use the Q&A window for technical questions, or if you need help during the webinar, or just use whatever window you want, give us your questions. We'll love it. Okay, today is very cool. It is the culmination of 5 years of wetland improvements. So I like to say slow and steady wins the race, baby steps all the way. And we have now hit our 5th year of wetland improvements on our wetland product line. So that means each field season, we talk to our users, get their feedback, and then go back and make improvements for the next field season. And because we're 5 years in, I'm talking, we're getting into some nitty gritty here, okay? Which is very cool for you botany nerds. In addition to our wetland delineation improvements, we have added 3 agency-specific modules: ordinary high water mark, CRAM, and success criteria for restoration performance indicators. That's 3 new agency-ready reporting modules within our wetland product line. Nancy will be demoing our CRAM functionality after our talk with Lindsay. So now on the WildNote platform, you can successfully execute CRAM baseline assessments, wetland delineations, ordinary high water marks, and restoration monitoring with success criteria reporting. And that's just in our wetland product line. Okay, let me nerd out here a little bit for the wetland delineation improvements. We added a thing called NI indicator status, so that if there's no indicator status published by the Army Corps for that particular plant, for that particular region, we now set that to NI, and we treat those as upland for the calculations. You now have the ability to control whether you want to display common plant names in your final export to the Corps. Some people like that, some people don't. So we added a flag, so you can do whichever one you want. We have integrated now with both Trimble R1 and Aero EOS for higher integration GPS accuracy. The ability to override dominance test and prevalence index worksheets also has been implemented. Why? Well, it turns out that if the wetland point has passed dominance, some of you practitioners don't want prevalence filled out at all. So we built that nuance in place. And finally, you can have access to soil web and national hydrography data set from your mobile device out in the field. So yay for improvements to the wetland product line. Now we're going to get to intros. I'm going to introduce Lindsay. Lindsay is a principal restoration ecologist for ICF. She has 17 years of professional experience in the design, management, and implementation of restoration projects throughout Southern California, coastal and inland environments. She specializes in monitoring and including development of long-term monitoring and management plans to meet agency requirements for in perpetuity preservation. Her work is focused on riverine sage scrub, and coastal ecosystems. Lindsay specializes in functional habitat assessments, such as the California Rapid Assessment Method and the Hydrogeomorphic Assessment. Since 2010, she has been one of the lead CRAM trainers in Southern California and became a member of the state's Level 2 L2 Committee, a subcommittee of the California Wetland Monitoring Group. We've had the pleasure of working with some of these folks in the L2 committee for our CRAM implementation, and the pleasure of working with Lindsay, and boy, do they know their stuff. It is amazing. So with that, welcome, Lindsay. We're so happy to have you here. Yay. Okay, so I'll start with our first stories from the field segment. Lindsay, you got any short story to tell us about being out there in the field doing some CRAM work?
Yeah, so I was thinking, and unfortunately for me, it seems the bulk of my stories either come from me looking foolish or me witnessing somebody else looking foolish in the field. And as I thought, I came up with more and more. So, but I think I'm going to go with one of my favorite ones because I have the luxury of working with a lot of great people and a lot of great women. And there's quite a few women who have been exceptionally pregnant while out in the field doing CRAM, including myself. But there was a time we were in Laguna Niguel in Sulphur Creek, and one of our colleagues had a bit of minor heat stroke, was struggling, and so we called the fire department, and we're in the middle of this like urban creek, and they come somewhere, and we all I don't actually know if there was a male in the group, but they were all women. We all run up to the top to tell them where we are because we're in the creek. And one of the people running with us, and I doubt she's on the call, but was Erin Bergman, who works for Dudek. And Erin's a rock star in all ways, but in particular while she's pregnant. And she comes running up and she's like, my coworker needs help. And the fireman's first thought was like, Erin must need help. She's this huge pregnant woman in the middle of a river. And no, she was just fine. It was another one of our personal, another one of our partners. So, in the interest of time, I won't go into more of those, but I have lots of embarrassing stories,
That's
both
awesome.
of myself and others. Yeah.
Thank you very much. Okay, so let's get to the what we call the problem solved area of our segments, and specifically, if we could just talk about rapid assessment methods in general, and what are they, and what is the regulatory driver for those?
Sure. So it's a really big question, and I'm going to make sure to couch this and also acknowledge that the term expert is a really big term, and not one that I necessarily want to take ownership of. So I will only say that I am very qualified within certain topics, and rapid assessments can apply to a lot of different types of methods. The wetland assessments, or the rapid assessments I work with, are specifically wetland focused. So both HGM, hydrogeomorphic method that you mentioned, as well as the California rapid assessment method, target wetland conditions. But the idea with any rapid assessment method is that it should collect a lot of information in a shorter amount of time than would be required using other methods. In a perfect world, it is cost effective relative to those. So it's all relative.
Mm-hmm.
This is something we talk about when we actually teach the class. Rapid is not, it's all a measure, relative to something else. But it's meant to be fast, cost effective, informative, ideally repeatable. And you actually on your LinkedIn page posted a video, I think it was earlier in the week or last week, showing a rapid assessment, some amazing rapid assessment method that was happening like globally to look at diversity, which is most definitely rapid within the context of what they're doing, and at the same time very different than a wetland condition assessment rapid method. But it was very cool to see that and to think about how they compare and how they are different from each other. So
yeah, working on the CRAM riverine, depressional, and slope, I'm thinking, how rapid is rapid really? Like,
right.
This is a lot of data.
Yeah. And so for CRAM, we generally, when we're teaching, suggest that the field portion should be anywhere from 2 to 3 hours, and it's 2 to 3 people that are working together as a team, in addition to having some before and after data analysis in office, both completing your data, potentially marking up figures, and many of us then incorporate that information into larger reports. But I feel like once it moves out of that and into the report, that's kind of a separate time quantification. But yeah, 2 to 3 hours in the field, unless you have to hike a really long way.
Yeah, right. So I know you're highly involved in the California Rapid Assessment Method. Can you speak a little bit to what the national landscape of RAM is, and also anybody out there that can also speak to it in our chat? That we would also love to hear what you have to say about that. But Lindsay, what are you thinking nationally?
Yeah, I'll start, and then I haven't been able to scroll through the 172 people that are sitting on this call, which is probably the most people I've ever spoke in front of. I'll have to put that down in my
Yep.
my record book, my Lindsay record book. But there are a variety of wetland assessments throughout the country. There are actually rapid assessment methods that operate at the nationwide level. So you can imagine the bigger the area that you're trying to survey or speak to gets, the coarser your resolution gets, because you're trying to find something, once again, that's repeatable, which means you can only dive into, the details to a certain level. Otherwise, you lose all repeatability. And so there are national wetland rapid assessment methods. I have no doubt there are other rapid assessment methods for other topics, but such as botany, but I will not speak to, or AV, birds. And then within many of the states within our country are a variety of rapid assessment methods, and many of them have learned from each other. So when CRAM, which we'll be talking about, was developed, one of the first steps from the development team was to look at the existing rapid assessment methods out there, whether it was Washington State, other parts of the country, see, what was working, what wasn't working, what could be improved for our purposes. And that was built in. And it's actually that process is documented in a peer-reviewed journal for anybody who wants to look at it, which is great. It's a really good peer-reviewed article on rapid assessment methods. And then HGM, we talked about the hydrogeomorphic method, is something that was developed and has been put out through the Army Corps of Engineers for decades. There are kind of HGM guidelines for operating at the national level. And then there's also many local HGM guidebooks, whether at the watershed level or project level throughout the country. And so wherever you are, in a perfect world, there is some form of a rapid assessment method that you might be able to use for your area, and or something that's similar for your area that maybe you can adapt and modify as appropriate.
Cool. I'm going to ask you this question and then get to a question by Dr. Troy Govender. What kind of training and why is it important to get trained on CRAM?
Sure. No, and that's a really good question. And I think one of the differentiators in particular for the California Rapid Assessment Method is the intensity of the training that we require is a bit more of an intense word, but that we certainly highly recommend in order to really be successful at implementing the method. And that goes back to what the purpose of the rapid assessment method is. And some of it also goes back to the why did CRAM come about in the first place? And so it was developed 15-ish years ago based on the regulatory environment within California, where many of our wetlands are impacted, associated with development. Mitigation occurs, and the question was, well, is our mitigation doing a good job at offsetting the impacts? And if you think about the no loss of acreage and function, people are having a hard time talking about the function piece of that, in particular at the state level. So when you think about the EPA and the state board, the regional or the state Water Quality Control Board, that question was really hard for their statewide programs. And so from that need, basically arose CRAM. And it, I totally lost your original conversation.
It was the training.
I'm completely like, thank you, training. I'm like, where am I going?
You're leading training. Yeah.
I should write these things down. Training, yes. So long story short, the method came about, but one of the important pieces of the method is informing our regulatory programs and our commitment to meet our no net loss of acreage and functions within the state. And so it was really important that CRAM spoke to the larger state, that CRAM spoke to the dominant or primary types of wetlands that occur throughout our state, and that the people who were practicing it could consistently conduct the measurements in a way that our regulators could feel confident in, and that would also be then comparable. So if we introduce a lot of variability from practitioners, then the data becomes less and less reliable. And so we do a 5-day training. The training courses have also evolved over time. So we do a 5-day training, usually focused on 2 wetland types, often riverine as one of the dominant wetlands that most people sample. And then depending on where you are in the state and what time of year we're teaching, it could be anything from depressional slope, estuarine, and yeah, I think those are probably the primary top three. And it just really ensures that everybody starts at kind of an even playing field, that they're going out. They understand, the method. I often say the method is, simple, but not easy. And if you treat it like it's easy, you'll just wind up doing it wrong. Same concept with the question you asked about rapid. If you think you should be going super fast, then you're probably not thinking long enough about what are we asking of you in the first place. So the training really kind of establishes that baseline understanding of what we're asking you to answer when you're doing the method, and then ideally reduces the variability in the data to make the data more powerful in asking questions of it.
Yeah. And Nancy, you want to jump on some of the questions here?
Yeah, sure. We have a question from Dr. Troy Govender. What are some of the basic expertise, i.e. qualifications and experience necessary for wetland restoration?
For wetland restoration, that's a really good question. And I mean, restoration in general is a huge, there's a huge life cycle that starts anywhere from, general planning and site evaluation all the way to, earthwork, weed management, long-term management. And so it's a huge skill set. So I would say, I mean, I'll start with ecologists since that's where I stem from, but landscape architects, engineers, hydrologists, geomorphologists, regulatory specialists. Many of on this call are planners, environmental planners in particular in California, the California Environmental Quality Act, or countrywide, our NEPA staff. So our earthwork contractors, our maintenance companies, financial management. There are so many skill sets that can find a home, public outreach, communication, graphic design. Holy cow, like it's all in some way or another. If restoration is of someone's passion, I think there's so many touch points.
Right.
He has a follow-on question, Lindsay. Is there a professional registration body for those who undertake wetland restoration to be registered to ensure a minimum code of conduct?
There's not a singular body, and sorry, that was specific to restoration, right? So there's not a singular body, but many of the larger organizations, Society for Wetland Scientists have certification programs, which took quite a while to develop and go through quite a rigorous evaluation process to be certified. And so that comes with that. There's actually is a code of ethics specific to that. So, and that's, yeah, I'm going to look it up. Actually, I'm going to quickly Google so I reference the right thing while I'm saying that. So kind of a yes and no. It's certainly not worldwide or nationwide, but there are organizations that, for those of us who are, serious about our practice, work to participate in.
Right on.
We have a chat idea from Christy Everett. I think this is reference, which kind of might go along with the information about what the certifications are. She says, a pretty good review book is Wetland and Stream Rapid Assessments, Development, Validation, and Application, edited by John Dorney, Rick Salvage. Oh, I've heard that name. Ralph Tainer and Paul Adamus. I've heard that name too. Published by Elsevier Inc. So that's
Elsevier, yeah.
Hey,
yeah,
Rena,
no, that's.
I'll put that in the.
Can you do that question right above too?
Yes. And then Christopher, I can't quite read the whole last name. I know Arizona's DEQ was interested in utilizing CRAM's methodology for episodic streams a few years ago, but I'm not sure where that has gone since my time working around it.
Yeah, I was going to see, it looks like, so I can give a quick answer, and then there are a few other people on this call that may not be able to speak, but I will message to them to potentially add to the text box. But there were some trainings that were actually completed in Arizona, and I believe some evaluation of how the episodic module would work in Arizona. And so Kevin O'Connor and Kara Clark, oh, there she is. I see it. Both people's names are on the attendees today. And so those would be two people, because they led the trainings and have really been tackling that topic, that could provide even a better update, whether it's now or through the chat.
Hey, this is cool. Kara Clark raised her hand. I'm going to try to allow her to talk.
Yeah,
So-
let Kara talk. Oh, and before I forget, I just before I forget, I just want to say, so the Society for Ecological Restoration has their Certified Ecological Restoration Practitioner Program, their CERP program. I'll put a link, I'm going to copy and paste it into the chat, but it was a very rigorous exercise, and many of us started that process when they released it. Okay.
Kara, take it away.
Okay, can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, great. Sometimes I have audio issues. Oh, I can start my video as well if you would like, or just fine. So yeah, we trained several Arizona DEQ staff in episodic CRAM a couple years ago. I don't know the current status of their implementation, but I know that they're very interested in using it. And as well, we've also talked with Army Corps staff in that area. And because there's not another rapid assessment method for those types of systems in Arizona, they're really interested in using it in their regulatory process.
Great. Fantastic. Thank you, Kara. Okay, I've got another few questions I want to hit before we run out of time here. Lindsay and Kara, how do rapid assessments fit into monitoring frameworks?
Sure. So that's a super good question, and one that I am particularly passionate about making sure is clearly understood. So they're one tool in the toolbox, and they serve their purpose. And we talked a little bit about, why they're rapid and what they're doing, but they don't replace the need for other types of monitoring tools. And we generally refer to CRAM and other rapid assessment methods as a level 2 monitoring tool. So the EPA has a standard framework of level 1, 2, 3. Level 1 being, really high level, your national wetland inventory, kind of GIS level evaluations. Level 2 being rapid assessment methods, and then level 3 being really your detailed on the ground. If I'm doing a restoration project targeting an endangered bird, I shouldn't be using CRAM to evaluate the population of the endangered bird. I should be doing population monitoring, perhaps along with CRAM, because if that bird is dependent on wetland condition, you may and would expect to see some form of a correlation, but one does not replace the other. So we have many restoration projects where we're doing simultaneously CRAM assessments, geomorphic monitoring from transects. We're doing vegetation transects. We're doing bird monitoring. And then we also continue to do our GIS mapping and other pieces of information. And that all comes together to tell a story.
Right. Is this a story of the health of that particular ecosystem?
Sure. Yeah. The health. And so CRAM is what's considered an ambient monitoring tool. It's telling you what's happening right now on the ground. It doesn't tell you what happened 20 years ago, and it doesn't tell you what's going to happen. You can certainly use it to speak to what maybe had happened and what might happen, but it really is looking at what's happening right now. And that we use it in a lot of different ways. So we use it to monitor restoration projects after they've happened. We also use it a lot to look at the opportunities for restoration, comparing multiple sites, determining kind of what the lift would be. Where is the site now with appropriate restoration activities? Where might it be? You can evaluate your dollars spent. Where do you get your maximum value? And so from the rapid perspective, CRAM can be really helpful in that. And on that side of the conversation, where you may not need population monitoring to evaluate that, but instead just want to understand kind of a big picture understanding. And one of the great things about CRAM is it operates at a lot of different scales. It's why I like it as an ecologist. It looks at what's happening at kind of the watershed level, or it's an immediate watershed level. It looks at what's happening in the surrounding area and its buffer, what's happening on site, both vegetation wise, but also with your physical structure, and all those pieces kind of overlap, to tell that story. And so I find it to be a simple yet powerful tool to having a conversation about, yes, wetland condition.
Yeah. Nancy, more questions?
Yeah, we got more questions. There's one, does California have a water, on this kind of note, does California have a watershed scale tracking or monitoring to determine net loss of functions?
I think I'm going to have to say overall, no, not across the state and not across all watersheds. It is being used more and more at the watershed level where funding and the right proponents have really started to push for its use in that way, but not at the state level. Well, okay, I'm going to slightly back up from that. Not to the level I think that would be able to truly answer that question. There is statewide monitoring that does occur at a frequency, at a fairly low resolution. And I know once again, there are other people on the call that may be able to speak to that a little better. So I know Kara and Kevin are on the call. I'm not actually sure who else is on the call. But I don't know if anybody has another opinion on that, feel free to raise your hand. My first gut is no, but we have pieces of it.
We've got, yeah, and we've got a few more questions and not a lot of time.
Okay.
Aaron McGinney wants to know if you have used the Beta SDAM, the stream flow duration assessment method for Arid West, and what you think about it if you have, and will this be something that will be required training in the future?
So I have not, and would be very interested in learning more about that. There are so many amazing tools that are being put out right now, and I personally have not worked with that. Unfortunately, I can't give you a comprehensive answer to that question.
And Michael Sweezy wants to know, I often find that CRAM, when applied to mitigation sites, undervalues the functional lift because CRAM takes such a broad view, including a large buffer that's often outside the boundaries of the site being treated. How do you account for this effect?
So I don't know that it's an effect as much as reality. So within any given restoration project, we have a limited sphere of influence. And unfortunately, in certain circumstances, that may or may not give you the capacity to manipulate things in the watershed or in the buffer. And so because it's a statewide method, and the statewide method accounts for the fact that there are going to be wetlands that are in landscape positions that can't improve without significant changes outside of any one individual's control. It's within that method. But what I would say is, as a restoration ecologist, within my design, within my reporting, within my evaluation, I would always speak to that. So for example, if I'm in an area, actually, I'll just use my field lessons site. So project in Laguna Niguel, project comes to a dead end before moving into a cement culvert. I can never change the fact, maybe not never, I don't think I can ever change the fact that there is no riparian habitat downstream, that it is completely cemented. And as such, this site will score a D, which is the lowest score for those that aren't familiar with CRAM. It's the lowest score it could get for downstream connectivity. And I speak to that and I acknowledge it. And the truth is, it does affect the wetland condition. And so although I don't have control over it, it is the reality of the site, which can kind of stink sometimes, but is some ways is out of our control, if that makes sense. So I would say I supplement CRAM with other pieces of information if I feel that there's more to be captured.
And we'll sneak in one more. Can you just, Christy Everett would like to know, can you discuss RAM for use in mitigation credit debit determination?
So I feel like there could be two pieces of that question. And so I'm going to try to pick one. I feel like it could be talking about how to use CRAM within a mitigation bank where you're doing crediting and debiting. And so at this point in time, CRAM has not singularly been used. It's been used to describe, the lift or loss, the lift at a restoration site, the loss at a mitigation site, or at an impact site. But that we singularly don't use CRAM. It's one of the monitoring tools, but usually the credit program itself will include CRAM and other measures. As far as kind of to take one step back when evaluating sites and talking about the lift, which is a big piece of what should generate credits, we run the method across the whole site, which is important to know that the method does not correspond to any one jurisdiction. So that can also add some complexities to discussing on-site conditions. So we run the method, and then we often will hypothesize what we think the results would be post-restoration, always focused first on what's appropriate for the site. So we always teach, we don't build to the metrics. So we don't build a restoration site or design to maximize your CRAM score. We always start with what's ecologically appropriate, what's ecologically reasonable for the wetland based on where it is in California and the watershed, its current conditions, and so on. But once we've thought through kind of the maximum ecological benefit that could be provided through restoration, it's somewhat simple math. And the great thing about CRAM is you can do that on another site. And I was mentioning that you could do comparisons about where your dollar, may be best served. If one site has a larger lift but costs, 20 times more, then you might actually still go for a site that's a smaller lift at a bigger geography. It's a and I should mention, sorry, really quickly, because there are a lot of good questions on here. So, and I don't know if any of the CRAM trainers have dropped anything into the text box, but cramwetlands.org has an amazing amount of resources, and two of the resources that build upon each other are the technical bulletins. So the first one is 10 plus years old now, but still has an amazing amount of good information. And then we didn't update, we kind of came out with a part 2, I'll say, that dives further into the use of CRAM in a variety of settings, situations, and they're both on the website and are fairly simple reads. And most of us, most of the people on the level 2 committee participated in some way in drafting those, so you can always follow up with questions about that.
So Sarah Pierce, hi Sarah.
Yes, Sarah's a good one. Oh yeah,
you said the online visualization tool ecoatlas.org is developing dashboards that are getting at the no net loss question. That seems important, and allow for tracking impact and restoration mitigation areas. It is only based upon impact and project sites that are included in the project tracker tool. So right now it's slightly limited, but as more projects come in and are entered, the ability to track the better track area will improve. Thank you for that, Sarah. And that leads me, so go ahead, Lindsay, please.
I was just going to say real quickly, this is actually a good example of what Sarah's mentioning of, because CRAM is rapid enough and fairly cost effective. This is an example of if a project is not required to conduct CRAM from a regulatory perspective, it still can add a lot of great information to our statewide understanding of our wetlands and aquatic resources. So I would highly encourage people to consider that. Many of us have worked with volunteer groups to go out and volunteer our time to run a couple assessments. So the more data we have, the more powerful not just the tool but our understanding becomes. And yes.
So kind of leading into that, you've got a technology webinar coming up, correct, Lindsay?
I do, yes.
Yeah, please talk about that. It's May 27th for everyone out there who may want to attend. Yes,
so we don't have an official announcement yet, but we're going to plan on getting that out in the next week or two. But we wanted to actually, from spending all of our time working with WildNote and Sarah and folks at San Francisco Estuarine Institute, really wanted to bring together the conversation about a couple technologies that we think are really applicable to restoration, not just in California, but across the country and broader. So we're going to be doing an hour-long webinar. We're going to be speaking about drone, online project, web-based viewing platforms, electronic data collection, both technologies that's being used at the individual kind of project level, but also the tools that we're using, such as WildNote, and then EcoAtlas to wrap up with that. So EcoAtlas is this really powerful tool that I don't think is being used anywhere near what it could be used in California, and it's all publicly available data. But so we're actually going to give a quick presentation on it with all the other technologies, but then we're actually going to follow that 1 hour with a 30-minute tutorial on using EcoAtlas, because we'd really like to encourage not just the input of data, but the actual access of data.
Fantastic. So it's going to be a pretty deep dive, it sounds like. So anyone interested in that.
Yes, and we will be posting it on, we'll be sharing it on LinkedIn and through our own webpage, and be strong arming WildNote to share it as well.
Yeah, we'll have it on our events page, and we will send it out to our email list. So you are all on it now, and we will definitely get that information to you. So I'm going to send it over to Rini. Will you jump in on the poll, Rini, and then talk about our Wild Nerds program?
Sure. Actually, Nancy, will you do the poll results? Because I can't always see that for some weird reason. Unless you're working on.
I don't have the results actually. Yeah.
Okay, you do it.
I got it. Okay, the polls are my favorite because I love data. So are you a rapid assessment methodology practitioner? 45% of you are. Hey, 33% say no, but they'd like to be trained, Lindsay. So
Right on.
and then what kind of projects are you using rapid assessment methodologies for? And the winner of that is project mitigations at 59%. Number 2, project impacts. And number 3 is ambient, new word to me, baseline assessments. So thank you very much for doing the poll. And I will now hand it to Rini to talk about our Wild Nerds program.
Great. I love those polls too. So I love this community. You guys are amazing networkers. I mean, just like all these people that know Lindsay, that know somebody else, that know Savage, that anyway, lovely community. And at Wild Note, we're building a similar community. And what we want to do is help you guys reach out and help your friends. So we've created a program, a customer referral program that we called Wild Nerd. So some of the things, you might be a wild nerd if you geek out over our new Wild Note features. And really the point of it is to give you incentive to invite other people to use Wild Note if you're a current customer. And if you're not yet a current customer, it might incentivize you to become a customer and bring more people in. So I won't go into all the details. I'll put a link to the landing page that explains more. But we'd really love to have you share the way that you tend to like to share information with each other. Thank you.
Thanks, Rini. You may be a wild nerd if you track your RV mileage in Wild Note.
That's our original wild nerd.
Okay. Thank you so much, Lindsay, for taking the time to come share your expertise on restoration in general and the rapid assessment methodology. You are truly a rock star in that world, and we are so lucky to have you here with us. So,
hey, Kristen,
Well,
real
thank you.
quick, since there's so many people who said they were interested in training, Lindsay, when is the next CRAM training?
Well, so we're still in the world of COVID and hopefully wrapping up. And I will say, the training I'd be mentioning is specific to the California Rapid Assessment Method. So at this point in time, we're working on a hybrid training approach with an online training, I believe in August or September, but not finalized, and then regional field training pieces. So that's coming together. And once again, if you go to cramwetlands.org, that's where we put our training announcements. And that's specific, once again, to the California Rapid Assessment Method. The other, learning rapid assessments in general, I would say the book, there are a variety of books, at least one that was mentioned in the comments, and otherwise there aren't a lot of great trainings. Most of us learned from somebody else who learned from somebody else who learned. And so, yeah, that's it.
all right. Thanks for that, Nancy. That I wanted to ask that, so I appreciate it. Hey, our next Lunch and Learn Wild Note version is May 11th. And we've been getting a lot of questions about buy versus build. And it is a continuum. It's not a binary decision. As ICF, actually, we see with them, they build certain things and buy other things and create a complete tool set to support their customers. So we're going to talk about those questions with respect to environmental data management, reporting, and data collection. So we hope you can join us for that, especially if you're sort of in the process of figuring out what do you want to buy and what do you want to build to serve your customers. And then I did the May 11th, and then upcoming topics, emerging regulatory ecosystems. So we're seeing these new ecosystems arise. Carbon farming seems to be one, offshore wind another. And we'd like to talk about how technology can support at a fraction of the cost standardization of data and standardization of reporting from the start in an emerging regulatory ecosystem. You may be a wild nerd if that gets you excited. Okay, and then we will talk about cultural resource. We've got a lot of features for that, mapping, offshore wind, and high-tech drones. And if you've got any topics you'd like us to discuss, please, please, please reach out. We want to be of value to this community. And with that, I think we're done for today. So thank you very much.
We'll have a little demo.
Oh, yes, we're not done.
Yes.
We're now into the demo section.
No.
So.
This is exciting stuff. And Kristen, can I just thank you guys for inviting me to participate? I'm one of many people you could have chosen, as you can see by the participation. There are a lot of, people out there engaged in this topic, and it was just really nice to work with you guys on this. And thank you to all the attendees that joined. I look forward to learning from you guys equally. So
Yeah, thank you, Lindsay. Great.
Thank you, Lindsay. You're amazing. Hey,
It's-
Sarah dropped one little piece of information about the CRAM training that starts on May 1st. Classroom sessions are going to be on Tuesday in August with full field sessions in September and October. So just a little more information there.
Oh, registration opens on May 1st. Yeah.
yes.
Yep.
Great.
All right, demo time. I will share my screen. So this is a quick overview of our platform, and it's through the lens of CRAM. We've been working diligently to on the first two modules, Riverine and Slope, with depressional coming close on its heels. So for those of you not familiar with the WildNote platform, we're a cloud-based web application plus a corresponding application that you download from the App Store for your data collection needs on your mobile devices. On both iOS and Android, it works offline, so you don't have to be connected to do your data collection. You sync your data back to the cloud and then do your data QA, QC, and export from the web platform, the comfort of your office or your home office. So what you're looking at right now is the projects page in WildNote. And when you come in on the projects page, each one of these cards represents a project, and we're going to dive into this CRAM development project so you can see a little bit of what CRAM's shaping up to look like. It's going to get field tested next week by a group of professionals, so that's very exciting. So within WildNote, there's two main menus. There's a project admin setup menu, and we're going to do just a teeny little bit of an overview here. Whoops, get in there, info. Sorry about that. Okay, so we're now I have to move the darn thing there. Okay, so CRAM development, we're in with the drop-down list on project admin. And then we're over here with drop-down list for project data. The admin side's all of your setup. So it's project context. You're going to set up what CRAM forms you're using, who's going to be doing the CRAM with you, any special documents that you need while you're out in the field, probably the CRAM training book because it is complicated and you might want that as a reference guide. You can load that up right through the app and have that launch on your mobile device contextually to your project. You can load up taxon favorites in advance. So if you have some known taxonomy that you think you're going to run into, if you take the time through the taxon favorites section of the tool, and I can pop in there so you can kind of see what that looks like. If you take the time to add some taxon favorites, those will populate to the top of the larger taxonomy list. And then instead of having to key those things in or smart searching for them on the mobile app, you can just pick them, which is much faster. And I can say it really is a lot faster. We've been doing a lot of testing, and I'm always grateful when the plant is right there in the list and I don't have to go actually key it in. In addition to that, so I think, well, actually that's good. You can also do track the life cycle of your data as well. So if you're on a large project where there's going to be a lot of data collected, there's a way that you can track data through our survey status feature as well. So it's a little bit about the setup of the project. I want to share my mobile device so you can get a sense of what that looks like. Just a quick check. Can you see this, Rini or Kristen?
Yes, we can.
Okay. All right. So you can see that there's some previously collected data down here. This is how your data builds up as you go along. And then in order to start collecting fresh data, you pick the form that you want from the drop-down list up here and then start collecting data. So once you're in here, one of the kind of cool things about being able to develop something in an electronic version is that you don't necessarily have to follow the order that things are in the paper form. So we've actually ended up putting the scoring sheet at the very bottom. So we do have auto calculations happening live in the field for you. And the scoring sheet, we have actually a scoring sheet and a scoring sheet summary based on feedback that we got directly from like Sarah Pierce and Lindsay and that crew, in that you want a quick way to sort of figure out if you hit all of the different worksheets associated with the particular module that you're in. And all of these modules are collapsed. If you hit the expand button, it'll take just a second. There's a lot of data and there's a lot happening in this form with all the underlying calculations. So just giving you a sense of what you see here and how you would enter the data. For the riverine, of course, you're going to immediately figure out if you're in a confined or non-confined, and that will trigger some conditional logic later in the form. So you'll only be seeing the worksheets that you need to see based on confined, non-confined, waitable, non-waitable, etc. So I'm just going to cruise through here. I'm not going to bother to fill this out. I'll show you what a filled out one
When
looks
you
like.
want to fill out confined or non-confined, Bill? Yeah.
Sure, yeah, I can do that. Okay, we're going to call this one confined. All right. And as you work through, each of the sections are collapsible. So if you're done with that section, you can just, sorry, I just collapsed everything. But as you go through, you can collapse and expand each individual section. And then you kind of know that you're finished with it. So, and even if there's not an associated worksheet, for example, water source, you're still going to give a rating within the overall context. And then that will feed the actual score sheet. The score sheet is 100% calculated for you, and you would change your underlying conditions in order to affect the score sheet. So this all feeds directly through, including your comments. Yeah, so we can kind of cruise through. You can see your channel stability, check marks are here. The trickiest bit of development, and I think the piece that's going to take people the longest time to get maybe used to, is the plant community metric. That was challenging, and you're looking at, we're really trying to understand the workflow of the way that CRAM practitioners walk their AA and figure out what kind of plants are there and what kind of layers are there. So when you come in at the top, number one, we have a little CalIPSY reference guide for you. So you could quickly type in a plant to see if it is invasive. So that's there for you. Let's see, we pick that. Well, it doesn't, you don't have to pick anything, but it just tells you if it's invasive. And then for the plant layers, there's conditional logic here. So if there is no layer present, then we will not show those particular plant sections for you to fill out. So if the short and the medium are not there, then the tall and the very tall are there. You'll see plant layers. This will automatically populate for you. The little calculator icon means it's a calculated field. And if it's grayed out, you can't actually make any changes to that. So one of the things we're really trying to achieve is some data integrity and some fail safes for people so that the data is consistent and that accidents don't happen in terms of the calculations. And
so shout out to Sarah Pierce, Linnea Spears-Lebrun, and Lindsay for really working with us on those exact issues over the last few weeks. Really improving the workflow and coming up with hopefully as many instant quality assurance processes to make sure that the data is as accurate and good as possible.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah. Kristen, I didn't know if you, I don't know how many CRAM practitioners are officially on the call, but I didn't know if I could share just a half a second about the higher level why we're doing this. And
sure.
So I guess the main thing of what I wanted to say is, many of us who are trainers are also practitioners, and for a long time have been looking for electronic ways of collecting our data for a whole host of reasons. One of the primary reasons for me is quality control. And we started working with WildNote years ago, and they volunteered their time. They came to a CRAM training in San Diego, and have really put a huge amount of effort into understanding the method. And our goal is to make this as seamless as possible with the worksheets that you already use. And I know Nancy will get there and show more, but including the exports so that the regulators that we've trained, that everything feels familiar. We don't want to make something that feels foreign and adds another layer, adds some confusion to something that we've already all worked so hard to understand. And so Linnea, myself, and Sarah are working with WildNote, both under the context of ICF, but also under using our level 2 and CRAM trainer hat. And so we're really excited that and hopeful that at the end of the day, this will be something that for any of you who are using WildNote, and if you're not using WildNote, you may consider using WildNote, is that it will make your life easier as a practitioner, that it will make our time in the field more efficient and effective, and that our reporting will be more streamlined, which only continues to improve our data, going back to the conversation we were having before. So I'm beyond excited. I think I've, over my CRAM lifetime, made 3 or 4 or 5 different electronic versions, anything from smart PDFs to to many, to kind of using some of the existing programs. And in this case, WildNote is owning this with our expertise, and which means if we change something on the CRAM development side, they will help to incorporate it. It will be quality control checked by, those of us who are working on it. So and we're going out next week to run a ridiculous amount of CRAM assessments using these as our first test. And I know I'm not the only one who's super excited. So yeah. Okay.
Fantastic. Thank you.
Sorry, Nancy.
Yeah, thank you, Lindsay. No, not at all. So I popped down, so you can see I entered a little bit of data, and I don't know if Linnea or Sarah are still on, but we did implement the scoring sheet summary, and it's pretty cool because you can quickly see, did you forget anything? Yeah. So as you cruise through the scoring sheet and go, oh yeah, there's a few I forgot. And so that's nice. So I'm immediately wanting to have a link that takes me back to that module right from here.
Exactly.
Right? Like I want to go to channel stability right now. So anyway, that's a little bit about what the mobile device looks like. And one of the things as you're moving through, my understanding, and correct me if I'm wrong, Lindsay, but you can have a whole bunch of different assessment areas within a single project context. So you can assign a project location to those. Those will end up showing up in the map view in the mobile device as well. So you can kind of track your progress in Willits when you're up there. And anyway, from there, let's pop back over to the web app and look at the export feature, couple export features. So once you've collected your data on mobile, you're going to sync it back and come into here to do your data QA/QC. So a couple of ways to do that. You can run it straight through to a CRAM export that you're familiar with looking at. You can also come in and utilize the editable grid within WildNote, which allows you to see all your data in a pivoted view, for example. So you can come through each one of the sections and really check, did we fill in all that information? Does it all look right? Does anything need to be updated? Those kinds of things. So editable grid.
Summary will be nice in the grid, huh?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Exactly. So you can see all the worksheets that you're familiar with seeing here. You can also run it out to a pivot Excel or pivot table in Excel if that's comfortable for you. So there's lots of different ways to get your data out of the system in order to do your QA/QC for that. So let me show you what the exports look like. I've already run them, but we have here's the Riverine export for one of the AAs, what it looks like.
So one of the benefits of a newer technology and having the photos incorporated is you no longer have the need for a photo log with photos in some zip file that aren't connected, right? We're able to just show the photos in line in the export.
Yeah, it's exactly. And in fact, the CRAM folks had us revamp kind of the way that the existing worksheets work. There's no longer that, as Kristen said, there's no longer the need for the photo log, and you can take the pictures right with your mobile device. So this gives you a little sense of what it looks like.
Yep.
And it's shaping up. We're continuing to do a little bit more work on this. And as we get feedback from the field, we'll continue to improve the product. Kristen mentioned earlier, we're on 5.0 for Wetland. I'm sure that we will definitely have a 2.0. Well, actually, we're on version 3, I think, of the forms, Kristen, at this point. So
right.
Yeah. So that's a little bit of what that looks like. And then we also have the slope as well. And
yeah, it looks amazing. It's really exciting.
Right.
I can't tell you how excited I am about the pictures.
Yeah.
I don't know this. Yeah.
That's great.
That's not even the data. I just want my pictures to be labeled and in the document. So
yeah.
Right on.
We have a comment from Matthew Schleiby. Sorry if I butchered your name, but a compliment. That looks great. So
right on.
This
right
must
on.
be familiar and pleasing.
So, the other thing you guys can do, which is so, to me, really exciting, and I think it will add some value. So I'd like to hear if I'm on track with that. But we also have an export If I come into our export window, and I've already run the export, but I want to show you what we have in here. We have, these are the export types with our Pro and our Pro Plus down here. So you can do pivot, as I mentioned, a straight up survey PDF for any of your kind of data. So again, we're talking CRAM here, folks, but this is a platform that serves any of your environmental needs. So you can build anything that you want. You can tap into a whole host of pre-built forms in our library that you can grab and modify to suit your needs. Everything from, you know, bird nest monitoring to any of your protocol level surveys to just general construction compliance to CRAM and wetland and you know, cultural work. So there's a whole host of things you can do, and you can tap into these various exports. But one of the cool exports that we just released was the species list export. So across a project, you might have multiple forms, you know, underlying templates, and then of course you're going to have all the data associated with that. You can grab all of that and run a single species list export that will tell you every species. And so I ran that for CRAM because we've been putting in real data from the CRAM practitioners. And so this is across the data sheets that we've been looking at for both slope and riverine. I just ran this out really quick and was able to produce this, you know, great plant list of everything that was seen on the project. So is that something that would be useful, Lindsay?
Yeah, most definitely. I mean, if, in particular for those of us that take CRAM and incorporate it into a larger report, anything that can comprehensively pull data together is awesome, especially since as part of the development, you know, we had that conversation about the vegetation layers and do we want to have everybody write everything, or are we just writing dominance? And right now we've set it up so that people can write everything and then we identify the dominance. But since everything will already be in there, you know, you're basically pulling together a plant compendium, at least within your CRAM assessment areas. So I think it'll be great.
Yeah, and so
this report is really a culmination of years and years of work on our taxonomy framework. And we've put so much effort into this and continue to build out a nationwide taxonomy database that includes not only the full structure of the taxonomy, but like, as you can see, is it a shrub, herb? I think that's called life form. I always get that one mixed up. We've also got native status and invasive status by state. It's not showing up here because we just didn't put the state in this project setup, but had we, you would get that. And just a shout out to all you botany nerds, as we go state to state, we need help finding the invasive statuses and the native statuses by state. And we would, you know, love to have that crowdsourced with all of us to get this complete nationwide taxonomy framework in WildNote. And I don't think anyone else is doing that right now in terms of.
Now you got me wanting to come down here and rerun this. Let's see what it looks like.
There we go.
So
yeah, we're hitting on the hour here. So
yeah, we are. So we'll wrap it up. Final thing, gallery. Lindsay mentioned being excited about photos. We really do a great job with photo management in this platform, and I say that not with hubris, but because that's the feedback that we get compared to other types of systems that you might be utilizing. And so this is a gallery view. This would be all photos taken within a project context. And these photos are all dynamically linked right back to the individual data sheets that they came from. We'll rename all your photos for you. You can smart search on captions. So if you're looking for something in particular, we'll narrow that search down for you across, you know, the entire data set. And so there's a lot of great functionality, and we of course have integrated photos into the CRAM export, but you can also run straight up photo exports with a 2-up or a 4-up. We have a special wetland photo export that's a builder that you can add some narrative into. So a lot of great functionality that way as well. So there may be another chat question, maybe.
I think there's just a few more compliments about how cool this is. I think people are a little surprised.
Yeah, thanks. So that wraps up just the brief overview. And I know if anyone wants to do a deeper dive, you can get in touch with our sales department, and happily we'll take you on a personalized tour of the tool.
One more
Nancy,
thing. One more thing. Yes, the recording will be available to view later, and they always are on our events page.
Perfect. That was what I was going to call attention to.
Okay, thank you, Lindsay. All right. Well, hey, have a great rest of your Tuesday. And
Yeah.
we look forward to our next webinar with Lindsay. Be a deeper dive, and to the Wild Note next one on buy versus build. So
Right
bye,
on.
everyone.
Thank you,
guys for being
everybody.
Thank you so much, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Bye.